The East Blue Saga is the first major stage of One Piece and covers episodes 1 to 61 of the anime, acting as the foundation for the Straw Hat's entire adventure. It is in this part of the story that the pirate world is introduced, Luffy's first companions enter the scene, and the group finally sets off towards the Grand Line. It all begins with the legend of Gold Roger, the man known as the Pirate King. When he was executed in Logue Town, Roger confirmed the existence of his treasure and unleashed the so-called Great Pirate Era, inspiring countless people to set sail in search of the legendary One Piece. From that moment on, the sea ceased to be just a sailing space and became a stage for limitless dreams, rivalries, and ambitions. It is in this world that we meet Monkey D. Luffy, still a child, fascinated by the figure of Shanks, the red-haired, a free, charismatic, and respected pirate. During this phase of his life, Luffy accidentally eats the Gomu Gomu Nomi, the fruit that gives him a rubber body and prevents him from swimming. The defining episode of Luffy's childhood happens when he puts himself in danger and Shanks sacrifices his own arm to save him from a sea monster. Before leaving, Shanks hands his straw hat to Luffy and leaves him with a promise: one day, when he becomes a great pirate, he must return it. That is where Luffy's great goal is born, to become the next Pirate King. Years later, now 17 years old, Luffy sets out to sea alone, determined to build his own crew. Right at the beginning of the journey, he meets Koby, a timid and insecure boy who practically lived as a prisoner under the rule of the pirate Alvida. Luffy defeats Alvida and encourages Koby to pursue his true dream, which is to join the Marines. This first adventure immediately shows the protagonist's central trait: Luffy does not only change the course of his own life, he also changes that of the people he meets along the way. Next, Luffy and Koby arrive in Shell's Town, a city dominated by fear because of Captain Morgan and his son Helmeppo. It is there that Luffy finds Roronoa Zoro, the famous pirate hunter, tied up and humiliated in the courtyard of the Marine base. Zoro was in that situation because of his honor, and Luffy immediately realizes that he is not an ordinary criminal, but someone with strength, pride, and a clear goal. After recovering Zoro's swords and facing Morgan, Luffy defeats the captain and frees the city from his authoritarian regime. Koby stays behind to try his career in the Marines, while Zoro agrees to join Luffy as the first member of the crew. Zoro's dream is to become the world's greatest swordsman, in honor of an old promise made to his childhood friend Kuina. With two adventurers already at sea, the story moves to Orange Town, a city engulfed by chaos and destruction caused by Buggy the Clown. Buggy is an eccentric and dangerous pirate, owner of a devil fruit that allows him to separate his body into several parts. It is also in this arc that Nami enters, an extremely skilled thief, expert in maps and navigation, who survives by stealing from pirates. Nami tries to use Luffy and Zoro for her own benefit, and for moments she even seems willing to hand them over to Buggy. However, when the time comes to act, she shows that she is not as cold as she appears and ends up getting closer to the group. Zoro faces Buggy's men, while Luffy directly fights the captain and finds a way to nullify his power by separating his body parts. At the end of the battle, Orange Town is freed and Nami agrees to accompany the two, although she makes it clear that she doesn't see them as true companions yet. The next stage takes them to Syrup Village, where the group searches for a better ship. It is in this village that they meet Usopp, a talkative, imaginative, and cowardly young man known for calling out false pirate attacks, and his friend Kaya, a rich and sick young woman. The major problem in Syrup Village arises when it is discovered that Klahadore, Kaya's polite and seemingly flawless butler, is actually the fearsome Captain Kuro in disguise. Kuro had faked his own death years before and infiltrated the house with a cold and patient plan, to kill Kaya at the right moment and seize her fortune. When Usopp tries to warn everyone, no one believes him. Luffy, Zoro, and Nami decide to help him, and the village coast becomes the stage for an intense fight against Kuro's crew. Kuro himself proves to be a fast and calculating opponent, capable of attacking with sharp claws and impossible to follow movements. Still, Luffy defeats him. As a token of gratitude, Kaya gives the group the ship Going Merry. Usopp decides to sail with them and officially joins the crew. With a ship, a navigator, a swordsman, and a sniper, they still lack someone capable of cooking. This is how the group arrives at the Baratai, a floating restaurant commanded by Zeph, a former pirate known as Red Leg. At the Baratai, Luffy meets Sanji, a talented cook with a difficult temper, who cannot stand seeing anyone go hungry and dreams of finding the legendary All Blue Sea. The atmosphere changes radically with the arrival of Don Krieg, who wants to take the restaurant by force. But the arc escalates with the unexpected arrival of Dracula Mihawk, the greatest swordsman in the world. Zoro challenges Mihawk without hesitation. The fight is short and brutal. Mihawk even fights Zoro with a small knife, showing a nearly unimaginable difference in skill level. Wounded and emotional, Zoro promises Luffy that he will never lose again. After that, it's up to Luffy to stop Don Krieg, whose strength relies on armor and dirty tactics. In the end, Krieg is defeated. Zeph then realizes that Sanji shouldn't remain tied to the restaurant. The farewell between the two is one of the saga's most emotional scenes, and Sanji finally joins the crew. But when the group seems complete, Nami steals the Going Merry and abandons her companions. Luffy and the others go after her to Kokoyashi village, where they discover the painful truth. Kokoyashi has lived for 8 years under the rule of Arlong, a cruel fishman. Arlong killed Nami's adoptive mother and forced her to work as a cartographer, promising to free the village if she gathered 100 million berries. For years, Nami stole and suffered in silence. When she finally gathers the money, Arlong orders the corrupt Marine Nezumi to confiscate the fortune. Desperate, Nami violently cries in the mud, repeatedly stabbing the tattoo associated with Arlong on her own arm. It is then that, unable to keep up the facade any longer, she asks Luffy for help. Without hesitation, he places his straw hat on her head. Luffy decides to attack Arlong Park. The battle at the center of it all is a clash between Luffy's freedom and the fishman's tyranny. Instead of just defeating the enemy, Luffy also destroys the map room, symbolically eliminating Nami's emotional prison. Kokoyashi is freed, Nami becomes a full-fledged companion, and Luffy earns his first bounty, 30 million berries. The journey advances to the final stop, Logue Town, the city where Roger was born and died. Zoro meets Tashigi and acquires the cursed sword Sandai Kitetsu, proving his courage. At the same time, Luffy visits the execution platform, but falls into a trap set by Buggy and Alvida. When he is about to be beheaded, Luffy smiles, but lightning strikes the platform, miraculously saving him. After a tense escape from Captain Smoker, with the mysterious help of the revolutionary dragon, the Going Merry sails toward a colossal storm. On the rain-battered deck, the 5 founding members make the Barrel Oath, declaring the dreams that drive them: Pirate King, Greatest Swordsman, World Map, Brave Warrior, and the All Blue. The legend of the Straw Hats has just begun.